What is going on, guys? It's your man Jay, and it's time to take a closer look at the OnePlus 8 and the Sony devices. Just some news for you real briefly. So first thing, starting off with the OnePlus 8. So supposedly the price has leaked out. Now I don't know, the conversion from this conversion rate is definitely high for a OnePlus. The lowest price you could possibly get is about $900. That's for the OnePlus 8. Now supposedly the base configuration of the OnePlus 8 Pro is going to be roughly, let's check it out here, roughly $1,000. And so there's two different variants. There's a 12 gig version of the OnePlus 8, and supposedly they're going to start selling on April 30th. But that one, whew, boy, that price translates to a well over $1,000 for a device from OnePlus. So highest price $1,100 roughly for the Pro, and $1,000 for the base of the Pro, and then a whopping $900 roughly for the lowest version or lowest model of the OnePlus 8. So this is going to come down to whether or not you feel like these phones are worth that amount. And that's with all devices. So I personally feel like I've learned that pricing is just like megapixels. In a lot of situations, it's totally way off. Sometimes you do need more megapixels, depending on what you're doing. And then in most cases, you don't need more megapixels, depending on what you're doing. So when it comes to the value of something, whether someone thinks it's worth it, like some people would tell me, "Oh, Jay, I can't believe you spent freaking $1,400 on the Z Flip." Well, to me, like I've said in many videos, this is definitely a phone that is way more intriguing than any of the phones that I've purchased in the recent days. So for me, it was a no-brainer to grab the Z Flip when it launched 2 months ago. I truly enjoy it. It's not just a phone for review. It's something that I like. And so when it comes to the OnePlus 8, there are going to be some reviews out there that tell you you probably should just get the lowest model of it because you're getting the same thing. Now we're getting more into that Apple type vibe. You know, I'm just going to recommend the lowest version of a device and say squash everything else. You really don't need all of that. So personal preference, I always try to get you guys the best budget. And I've also gone on record and said, hey, don't do what I did. You do what you want to do. And I think that's important for you to remember. So if in fact these are the OnePlus devices and these are the prices, I mean, you can only stay a flagship killer for so long. They don't even use that terminology anymore. I think that was all in their plan, is to, you know, get you to liking it, and then eventually we have to increase these prices because we gotta remain profitable. So the phones do come obviously with Android 10. The one important thing that's not mentioned on phone reviews sometimes is the storage capabilities. So while the base configuration is a 128, it is UFS 3.0, which means you get faster transfer speeds. That actually means something to a lot of people, and I could see why it would mean something. It's important to get things done quickly depending on how much you upload. So for me, I need the fastest read and write speeds on whatever I'm using. Like my card that I use for my DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, they have to be at least a class 3, a class 10. It has to be the third. So I have used other SD cards, and it's a long transfer rate. So when it comes to a phone, some of us, you want to plug your phone into your Mac or your PC to get the data off, and you need to get that big, large 4 gig file off or 8 gig file off your phone fast. And so memory options are great, but how fast is the storage when reading? So that's important. But ultimately, you're just looking at the same specs that are in most flagship phones today, if you still want to call them a flagship. You know, some people don't think so, some people do, but it is what it is. I'm more excited to see that, you know, they've got these Sony sensors in the phones, but are the cameras going to be greatly improved? Are they going to be good enough to compete with the likes of the V60, with the likes of the Samsung devices. And that's something that remains to be seen. We'll see how that works out. Now on to Sony. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark II said to release in the first quarter. Now we're in the first quarter. Actually, we just left the first quarter. We're in April. So I'm concerned that they're gonna try to pull the blanket over our eyes again, unfortunately, with this phone, because I really would like to have a 4K display on the device and use it regularly. And right now, Sony is the only company that's doing something in that fashion, but they're not taking advantage of the market. They're taking a long time to get things to market. Now, this was announced way back in February. We're in April, and that's probably, oh, Jay, that's just a month and a half when it was initially launched or announced. But, you got to get in the habit, Sony, of giving us our devices faster. We don't want to wait 6 months just to get something, because ultimately it doesn't become irrelevant. It's just that we lose interest. And then after that huge debacle with the first version of this phone, those cameras were hideous, and people were saying, oh, you're not doing it right. You don't know what you're doing. It's for professionals. Sony's not selling phones to try to get to professional photographers. They're not doing that. I think it's a little bit of denial going on right there. But ultimately, if Sony wants to play in this game, like we had a discussion the other night, shout out to my man L Boogie and Gigi and Eric and Chris. We had this discussion, and Tana, we had this discussion on the stream the other night, and it just was LG. We were back and forth about LG, but in the end, I think we all agreed they do need to get some kind of foot planted, and Sony needs to do the same thing, man. This can be such a great device, but marketing is always going to play a part for some of these companies. It's a fail from the beginning if you do no marketing. So for the first time, the Huawei P40 is amongst us, and the pricing is right, but I don't know, man. I'm just not interested right now. I want to pull the trigger on it because I want something to compensate for my not having the Mate 20X, which I can obviously get the Mate 20X again. But the Huawei P40 Pro 5G, folks, it's a win. It's priced at $1,000. Why wouldn't a person want it? It's just one of those things where some phones, man, they just don't catch on. And the P40, and I'm talking about for me. I'm not saying the P40 is bad in any kind of way. I'm saying for me, the P40 isn't on my radar. It's something that I would think about getting, but I'm not rushing out to get it just because it got announced. $1,000 for this phone is obviously probably a much better purchase, definitely on paper, than my Z Flip. But I look at it like this. Again, going back, it's about what you like, what you want to spend your money on. And the P40, as much as I want to get it, the excitement isn't there. This happens sometimes with phones, but I don't know, the excitement's it's just not there. I'm not feeling this ramp up of, oh gosh, just not feeling it. And I know that there's probably going to be high remarks for this device. I'm not throwing that aside for it not to be noticed for that. But the P40, we talked about this last night as well, and it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't have that fire under it like the Huawei Mate 20 had for me. So again, I could definitely get the P40, but I'm still indecisive. I don't know. I haven't had a Huawei device, I think, faithfully using it since the Mate 20X, and that phone, as you know, is totally awesome. So a little bit of news for you guys, man. I'm excited for that. Before I get out of here, there is obviously talk of the A51 and the A71's 5G versions passing through. This is correct. We knew that there was going to be 5G versions of the device, but how well do you think it's actually going to do in the US? Like they're releasing these phones. Who's going to carry them? Are the carriers going to go ahead and pick them up so they can give us an affordable option for 5G? What's going to happen? I don't know. The A51 and the A71 are great devices, but are they good enough to compete now after the fact? Because I think Samsung slows it down in releasing certain devices in the US because they don't want to step on their own toes, which is something that a lot of OEMs have an issue with, stepping on their own toes. You release something that's so good, and then people won't even pay attention to the other stuff that costs a heck of a lot more. And I got a feeling that's what we're going to see here with these Samsung phones once they hit. How are reps going to actually sell this to customers and convince them? Are they just going to talk about specs? What are they going to do? Because technically the A71, the A51 blew away the S20 line because they have the same look and feel at a much lower cost, and it does pretty much the same thing. Ultimately, that's it. So it's your man Jay. Anything else in the news you want to talk about? Let's talk about it in the comments section of this video. I appreciate you guys stopping by. I'll see you in the next one. More videos coming, trust me.